Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wear. This is DDLynn, and I'm excited today to continue the copper washer theme. And I mentioned it, for those of you, pardon me, let me back up. For those of you that had just watched my copper washer ring tutorial, I went through on how to use a dapping block to shape and dome your copper and how to hammer it. I won't be going through that today. I will put a link down below called copper. It's basically a copper washer twisted or spiral ring tutorial. I'm at a loss for words this morning, y'all. But anyways, I haven't done a tutorial in over the last, I think, 10 days because I lost my voice. You can hear that it's still a little on the rough side. I visited some friends for a week and I was destroyed. Had a great time. So anyways, let's get back to what's most important. So I'm going to teach you not how to hammer these, but you will, if you watch my copper washer ring tutorial, you will see where to buy the washers. You can get them on Amazon. This is second to one of the smallest sizes that I'm using for the bracelet. So I'm just going to teach you, which is so easy, y'all. Really, really easy. Basically, we're just going to be wrapping a bead in between a copper washer, and then we're going to be deciding on our accent bead. This is a beautiful agate. These are agate leaves, and this is called Red River Jasper, and it's got all sorts of different blacks and whites, and if you look at it up really close, you can see some greens. So that's it. So I won't be doing a whole bracelet because it's pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to do a couple pieces, and then I'm going to show you the end, which is just adding your links. And I used a 100% copper lobster claw. This is 100% copper. It is not plated. And jump rings. That's it. It's that easy. So before we get started, please remember to hit the bell. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, and your comments and feedback are really appreciated. And I would appreciate if you would just give me design credit if you're sharing your work when you're done. Just say design credit DDLynn Designs, or copy the link to my YouTube page. Trying to build my page so eventually I can get monetized. Anyways, let's get started. So you're going to need to, if you like twisted jump rings, and for those of you that have followed me a while, I really like twisted jump rings. So I twisted a 20 gauge square wire, and I used the number 3 on my 6-step bail making plier. It's really important before you start twisting your wire to make your jump rings that you make sure that they can fit in between your washer, okay? Because we've got this, because I've domed it, it doesn't look like it has to be bigger, but it will, because the way it has to go through and around this washer, and then all we're going to be doing is connecting it to our other accent stone. So you want to make sure that those fit, unless you know you already have some cut. I do too. I'm going to be using a 24 gauge weaving wire, and that I'm going to be used to wrap the bead. Okay, on this one I used 22, but I wanted to make it user friendly because 22 gauge is no fun wrapping around these really hard, rough square edges. They're soft and buff now because I threw this in the tumbler. But I don't know if I would use any lighter than that. And again, the reason is you've got this really sharp edge. So that's all we're going to do, is we're going to be wrapping. You're just going to be wrapping a bunch of these depending on how long you want it. And then for the bead, make sure that before you cut your wire, that your wire, get some scrap wire, will fit through whatever accent stone you're using. So I'm using a 20 gauge for the bead. I want this to hold up. So if you're using a 26 gauge, eventually that wire is going to harden and snap. Believe me, I know it will. I've seen it happen. When I first started, like everyone, we were all using thinner wires because we had more control. But I made a bracelet for my sister, something like this with attached beads, and they were all done in not a 20 gauge, but a 22, and eventually from her wearing it all the time, the wire hardened and began to snap. So you need to use 20 gauge on your beads. That's my opinion. Do as you please, but just telling you from life experience. So it's going to be pretty basic, gang. We're just going to wrap the bead. So I've cut myself 7 inches of 24 gauge round dead soft wire. Now, the other thing that you want to make sure of is that your bead isn't too big based on the washer size you chose. So you could always get, when you get your box of washers, just get your bead box that you have and start comparing the size of the bead to the washer, because you're going to need a little bit of gap space, but not that much gap space. So I've got a little bit of gap space here, and you'll see this better in a minute. And I really want to stay focused and in frame. And let me open that window and see if I can get some more light. Hopefully that's better. I had to get up and open my blinds. It's very early in the morning. Okay, so you just want to find center on your wire. And I know I have 7 inches here. So this is going to be the 3.5 inch mark. And you're just going to get your washer. Make sure you know that they're fairly centered, because you're going to need the wire on each side. If you're concerned about running out of wire, then absolutely cut yourself more. Cut 8 inches, that will be plenty. On this one, because I used a 22 gauge weaving wire on the copper washer with the bead, I only did 4 wraps, okay? On the new one, I'm doing 6. Because it's a thinner gauge wire, I wanted more wraps. You can do as many as you want. You know, I just want to make sure that the washer is showing. Also want to, as I mentioned in my ring tutorial, look what a gorgeous earring this would be. And I've already made them to go with my bracelet. Of course, the bottom here, I torched it so that it's just a little ball on the bottom. So isn't that a gorgeous earring? Or this way. Now, some of you might ask me where I got these leaf agates. Got them a long time ago, and I know I got them on Amazon. So type in, maybe when you're doing a search, do cabochon leaf agate or cabochon agate leaves. And I just thought they were so pretty. But look what a gorgeous earring that would make. This would also make a beautiful drop for a necklace. So you could do a necklace chain, which I'm already working on a necklace chain, something like this, but I'm changing it up a little bit. And I'm using a much bigger copper bead in copper washer in the center, just giving you some really good insight, you guys, to how you can take off on something. And so the center for the necklace is a bigger copper washer bead with a bigger bead. I've also done copper washer beads setting a cabochon in the middle. So, and you can change this up here. And then on my necklace chain, it's going to be more of the jasper beads. And then occasionally I'll be using a washer, kind of bringing it in and out, you know, versus perfectly all the way along. I wanted this to be really organic. So just wanted to share that with you really, really quick, where you can go with this. Rings, necklaces, it's just endless. A guy's ring, etc. So all I'm going to do is wrap it, okay? So I'm going to come, wire's coming towards me, because when I turn around on the other side, wire's going to go in the opposite direction, okay? So when you're wrapping, you're going to feel it want to bow up, okay? That's okay. Don't worry about that bow in the back, because we're going to be tucking our wire under there. And if you notice, I'm using my fingers, my digits, until that was my dog, Sophie, until I don't have to use my fingers. I just find that I'm not yanking on the wire as much and contorting it out of shape. What do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now we're going to do, as I did on another tutorial, it's called Hide the Wire. And we're going to hide this wire, which is why I wasn't concerned about these loops being popped up in the back. And I'm just going to feed it through. And you kind of want to scoop that wire and make it into question mark. Of course, It won't be easy this morning, right? Like it was yesterday. Okay, let me show you. You see how that wire's coming out there? Then I'm going to hold the center and pull it through really hard. Oops, I just slammed my arm against my workbench. So I pulled that wire through, and I will try to remember to post a link for that down below. I have a tutorial for this on how to hide your wire. So it's gone. Now, what I did on this, because I really like the technique, and I'm going to show you how to do it on this one. I love things that just have organic. I like to wrap wire over wire, where in the wire world, in some cases, it doesn't make sense, you know, to cross your wire over other wires without them being flush against them, but it actually creates some really unique look, you know, it just changes the look. I like it wrapped around that. So on this side, when we wrap the bead in, and the reason why I'm doing both of them is I want you to see your options, okay? Now this time I'm going to wrap on the, bring my, so when we wrapped over here, sorry for the pause, you guys, I was just making sure I'm centered up. When we wrapped over here, the wires are going, if I hold this towards me, to the left. And now when I wrap over here, my wires are going to go to the right, my wraps. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to create more of a center. So I'm just going to do 6, and then I'm going to show you the different way. And it's kind of just a really, I don't know, I started doing it years ago, wrapping my wire around other wires to tie them off, and I love the look. Now when you use your pliers versus your fingers, you're going to feel that 24 gauge wire. What do we got here? 6. You're going to feel that 24 gauge wire really harden up on you very quickly. So all I'm going to do is feed it again through the back, which would complete this full 6 rotations. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to feed it over these wires and through. So it's coming out the back. Now this wire, you got to watch it here. Oops, let me show you. You see how it's puffing up? So what we're going to do is we're going to push that through. Because you're pulling in the opposite direction, and then I'm going to hold it. So I put my thumb down over those wraps, and I held it, and I pulled really tight. And that tightened that little puff in that wire against this washer. Now remember, this washer is convex this way, okay? So just going to feed it through again. And if you're going to be doing this technique and you don't like working with short wire, or you're new to wire wrapping, then you'll definitely want more wire. I would cut then 8 inches. That way you've got good working wire. And all I'm doing is feeding it through and wrapping it around those wires and creating a different technique. And that's it, gang, right there. So depending on the look that you want, okay, it's really up to you. Now to complete that, I just wanted you to see, I want them to be like this. So I'm just going to, even though this wire is already tucked under, it really doesn't matter. I'm just going to wrap it around so that they're equal, okay? I may not have enough room. I'll see here in a minute. I'm going to get my pliers, and if not, that's okay. Just kind of pushing that back to see if I can feed my wire through there. And I can, so I'm going to get that look. Now I'm not going to feed it twice, and it doesn't matter. This is a very, very organic look. I just wanted them to match. That's it. So you need to make as many of these that you want to make based on the length of everything, the size of your jump ring, to determine the size of your bracelet. So I meant to say that earlier. So this is, each one of these is a 1-inch square. So this is 8 inches. And it's funny because I have a 6¼ inch wrist. And even though it's 8 inches, I would never wear an 8-inch bracelet. But because of the washers, the copper washers, believe it or not, the way they rest against the wrist, that takes up more space. So if you have someone with a 7-inch wrist, you definitely want them to have. So this is how much gap, let me put this on, I'm going to have. So it's important to do that, right? To understand that, okay, Deanna has a 6, Deanna, that's my formal name. DDLynn is my nickname. My middle name is Lynn, you guys. So I've been called DDLynn, D and Dee. Whatever you want to throw out there, as long as it's nice and starts with a D for Deanna, DDLynn, Dee or D. Anyways, do you see the gap in here? Do you see that? That's 8 inches. And on this type of bracelet, you want it to have movement. You do not want this resting tight against the wrist, unless you're wearing it and it's your personal preference. But if you're going to take it to market, you definitely don't want this tight against the wrist. And the bigger the washer, the less you're going to need to use, because it's going to take up a lot more space, which is why I used a lot of smaller copper washer. And also my leaf. So my leaf measures, so you can always lay everything out on your mat to figure out roughly what you're going to need. So my leaf measures a 1/2 inch, and then my links to connect to my other side of the bracelet measure 1¼ because I'm using a 1/2 inch copper lobster claw and 3 jump rings that work out to be about 3/4 inch. Just giving you some math there of what you need to think about. So we're almost done. So all we're going to do is just make a bunch of these. Let me just snip these off. And it's really important that you cut these super close down on the bottom. And I'm going to push mine in a little bit. And what I do is I get in here and I rock that wire really, really close. Because I just want a little nib in there. And then I'm just going to tuck it right next to that bead. You will never feel it. It's sitting above the wrist, okay? You're not going to feel anything because of the dome on this, and it's tucked in there really good. You certainly don't want a loose end down there. Okay, that's it. So all we're going to do is make our bead, not make our bead, wrap our bead, and I cut myself, because of the length of my bead, 2¼ inches of 20 gauge round wire. I'm just going to find center and wrap my bead. Now, the reason why I didn't wrap my bead inside of here, and you can do it, is because of the shape of this dome on here. You need a much bigger hole to wrap over this, and I didn't like how big that looked. It looked weird to me, and I don't know if I'm making any sense. Do you see? Okay, so I've wrapped this bead, and I'm going to use jump rings to connect it, right? So in order to do it, to have it completely connected to the copper washer, it's going to need to be number 3 or number 4 on your 6-step bell making pliers in order to get it over your copper washer, right? So I did that. I did not like how big that looked. It was a really big look. So I said, you know what? I like it much better just attaching the jump rings. They're twisted, they're decorative, and it looks really pretty. Up to you. Give it a go if you like that look. It's all about personal preference. And so all I'm going to do is make my bead, and I'm going to connect it. I'm using my smallest, and I'm just going to, and I'm only going to wrap twice, which is why I only need 2¼ inches. Now, if you're new to wire wrapping, often when we're wrapping our beads, the wire that's going around the neck is coming down at an angle. So let me show you a really cool trick or tip. Just get a pair of pliers, and hopefully you can see this, and anchor the plier off of the other plier and on the bottom underneath where you've made your first wrap, and just give it a scooch up, squeeze it up. Did you see that go up? So it's now perfectly flush with the neck. These are the things that I always encourage everyone to look for when wire wrapping, especially when they're first starting, is not so much, I really want to make that design, but I don't know how to do it because I'm new to wire and it's so frustrating, is look for the techniques. How did they get the wire to go that way? Notice that the person that you're watching moved the wire far away from where they wanted to go because they knew they needed the wire to be completely in the opposite direction to create the shape that they wanted to go in the direction that they needed. These type of things. How to hide your wire, you know, those kind of things. How to get your wire lined up on the neck of something. All of these things matter when you're working with wire. Cutting, where to cut your wire. So here's another technique. I'm going to get a different plier. This is a short-nosed, flat-nosed plier by Xeron. And if you notice, I'm just going around, just squeezing it around. And I've already got my 2 wraps. I don't want it to come around the back because I already started there. And then I'm just going to trim it. And that's still too long. I don't want it hugging around the back. So all I'm going to do, some people will spend this much time with little, you know, components, and other people don't. And it's just personal preference. I like everything to look good. And where I live in Sedona, everything is very expensive here. So we are a tourist area and we can command a lot more for something that if you were just in a small town, you probably couldn't get due to the medium income. So anyways, I want everything always to be beautiful. So that's it. Spending way too much time on doing the bead, but I think technique is so critical. And so same thing over here. So here's another tip. You want to make sure that you bend your wire. Do you see how I have a bend here? I'm always about tips and tricks, gang. So if you're advanced, you're going to be bored and yawning through this whole thing. But I will always take my time for beginners because so many things, I'm self-taught. I could never figure out stuff. And when there was girls doing tutorials, they wouldn't go into detail about, you know, when you're bending this, do that. You want to bend this wire here in the same direction. So this wire was bent back when I started my loop, okay? So how I'm going to know where to do that is by putting my bead in, which obviously has to be in. So I know I want it bent this way. I want to leave myself just a little bit of gap space because remember, I'm wrapping that neck twice. Then I'm going to use my number 1. And honestly, y'all, it never takes me this long to do this kind of thing. It's just because I'm doing a tutorial. So everything takes longer when you're doing a tutorial. And I'm just rocking it and straightening it up with the other side. That's it. All you're doing is making this many beads, deciding on how many, I need a different plier for that, how many you're going to need to make your bracelet, necklace, earrings, whatever it is that you need to do. You can see this is a short piece of wire. I didn't want to waste my wire doing this, so I always measure my wire after I lay my bead down to figure out how much I'm going to need so I don't have a lot of waste. And we now have our finished beautiful little leaf agate. She's got little red in it. I actually thought this was jasper at first when I saw it, but gal said it was agate. I don't know. I think sometimes we get things that aren't so. Okay, so see, I've already connected this one. On this one, I used 2 jump rings. I want it to hold up. This is a bracelet where it's going to get a lot of movement, and your wrist is going to be hitting the table or you're writing, or you're going to be your wrist is going to get a lot of action. So, sorry, I paused for a minute. I could see my husband out the window and I thought he needed me to get up and open the door. So I'm going to, remember I've already twisted my 20 gauge wire. I'm just going to cut myself 2 lengths. Actually, I'll do 4. And when you twist your copper wire, it hardens it. It's amazing. I wouldn't use 20 round on this if it wasn't twisted, because it's too soft. Then I'd have to go to an 18 gauge. So all I'm going to do is start connecting. And I'm simply just going to start adding my links. So you can do them all at once or not, but you all know how easy this is now. It's a no-brainer. And if you can't get your washer in there on your bead like that, then see what I mean, that dome space, which is why I needed to use the 3. Then you put it through the washer first, because that bend in that washer is what makes it harder to feed something through. Normally I don't have this hard of a time, but I am today. I don't know what it is about doing tutorials. Everything becomes a pain. Maybe because I'm trying to stay under the camera and I'm worried about, I just want to make sure this is going in the right direction. And I don't wrap it backwards. Whoops. Sometimes it's just easier to... So this is what I meant about how big that loop has to be. So I actually think it would, if you wanted to have your bead permanently wrapped to your washer, it just looked weird as to me as just the bead itself, and I'm probably not making any sense, but if you try it, you'll know what I mean, because you just have just enough space here, and it just looked weird. If you can imagine, to me, this whole loop this big, I didn't like it. So that's just personal preference, right? So I'm going to do 2. I'm going to wrap this twice. And that's it, ladies and gents. That's all you're going to do. Is you're going to cut some jump rings. You're going to wrap your washers. I will put the link to my dapping block on how to hammer these. If you don't have a dapping block, then just leave them flat. They come flat, okay? And just hammer them, texture them really, really well with your chasing hammer. So just texture them really well, because you really want that texture look. It creates such beautiful definition in the copper. Highlights and lowlights, and all you're doing is connecting. Then you're going to add your jump rings. I'm going to double up on these because I don't want a lot of pulling, and believe you me, girls are going to be pulling on their bracelets, so this is going to be 2 each. I realized when I finished it I forgot to do that, so I'm going to have to add 2 more, well, actually 3 more jump rings. So you want it really strong, because we put a lot of wear on our bracelets. And so then on the end, I want to show you that really quick. I did not add jump rings when I added a bead. So the last one on the end, sorry, that's my tag. I'm getting ready to do a show. On the last one, I just added the bead, okay, like I did here. But instead of adding a leaf, I decided to add a bead. You can add a leaf instead. Just what I decided. I hammered the loop and made it bigger. I used the number 3 because this is going to be my clasp and with my hook. So the last one that you're going to tie off on, once you get to the length that you want, you're going to need to either do your leaf or your bead or whatever you're using, y'all, and make sure that you use the number 3 or 4. If you're going to make your own hook, normally I make my own hooks. I seldom use lobster claws to hook onto bracelets. 1, I don't think it's as a sophisticated look as I like. And 2, a lot of times it just doesn't work out for me. So I make my own hooks. But on this particular bracelet and the way it dangles and hangs, it works out perfect. So just a little hint there. That's it. I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. May you have a wonderful, magical wire wrap day. And as Thumper said in Bambi, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, then please don't say anything at all. Bye for now.